Hello everyone and welcome back. In this lesson, we are going to start developing our smart contract. But before development, let's talk about what we are going to develop. We are going to develop an NFT project, but it's not like a classical NFT project. So what we are going to build is an NFT CV for the developers. So in our application, we will have a table where people can create their own cards. If you have ever played FIFA, then you would know the player cards. So this will have the same ideology. We are going to have this user cards, and in this cards or developer cards, and in this cards we are going to have some information about the developer, like the years of experience, the technologies that developer use, and the link for the portfolio, and so on. For this, we are going to need some tools like a couple of structs and of course functions. So before further ado, let's get started. As you can see, I created a new project, and again, you can create your own new project using the command sui move new and the name of the application. Let's look at our Move.toml. This file, as you can see, we have our package name, DevHub, and we have one import, which is the sui. We are going to change just one thing here, and that's the testnet, because we are going to work with the devnet. But other than that, we won't have any changes. Just be aware that we have the DevHub as the name of this package, because we are going to use this in our module. I will go to the sources and I will build my first module. Let's call it DevCard.move. Now we created our file, and let's move on with our module. I will say module DevHub because that was our package name, then DevCard. So in this module, we will have a couple of imports. Let me just paste the imports and tell you what they do. Let's start with our first import from the standard library. Again, if you're coming from a programming language like Rust, so this is the same ideology. Option means that we can have a value or not. So if you're not sure that if we have a value or not, we use the option. Then we have the string, because move originally don't have string, but with sui move, we can have strings which comes from the standard library. Then we have the transfer for transferring tokens. Then we have the object. Obviously, we are going to work with objects. And as you can see, we have UID and ID separately, but we are going to talk about this later. Then we have the transaction context. And again, this is the context where the transaction happens. So we have some information about tokens that are transferred with this transaction, or the address that is making this transaction. Then we have the URL, which can be actually Web2 URL. So we are also going to use this URL for our images. We have this coin import. Then we imported the sui, which is the sui token. Then we have the object table, because we are going to have our NFTs or developer cards in this object table. Then we have the event. We haven't talked about the events before, but events are the parts that actually gives information to the front end. So if something happens, let's say I created a new developer card, then I will have an event. And in this event, I will say that developer card has been created, and I will have some information in this event so that the front end can know what's happening when transactions happens. These are our imports. And let's move on with a couple of errors that we are going to use in our contract. So first, I will have a classical error. So for a couple of changes, for a couple of functions, we will have not the owner error, because we don't want everyone to manipulate our NFTs, obviously. So our first error is not the owner. And this will be a U64, and I will say 0. These errors are basically constants with the value of an unsigned integer, meaning a 0 or positive integer. Instead of saying just 0, 1, 2, 3, just instead of putting numbers, we are going to put not the owner, because then it's going to be easier to see what error that we are working with, and in the code it's going to be much more clear. Next, we will have insufficient funds. It's also going to be a U64, and I will say 1 for this one. Next, we will have the minimum card cost, and for that, let's say min card cost, and let's say 1 for the time being. During this development process, you may see that actually we can make this contract better. And there are other ways to develop the same contract. So it may not be the most efficient contract, but I designed it this way so that we can see many concepts, and in our future development using Sui Move, we can refer to this contract. That's why it's not the most maybe logical one. Maybe you can say I can do it better, and I encourage you to do better. So if you can actually take this contract and develop further, that would be great, and I'm encouraging everyone to do this. Now we are going to have a struct, and in this struct we will have a couple of fields that can be necessary to have this developer information. So let's say DevCard is our struct, and it will have a key because we want a Sui object, and it will also have a store. Next, we will have the ID as the first field since it's a Sui Move object. Then let's say we have a name, and let's make it string. Then we have the owner. Let's make this address. We have the title because I might say that I'm a, let's say, Web3 developer, full stack blockchain developer, front-end developer. So that will be the title of the developer. This will also be a string. Next, we will have the image URL. And in Sui, we can actually get this URL from Web2 applications. So I don't have to work with decentralized storage systems, but I can if I want to. But if I don't want to, I can also work with centralized ones. And the type will be URL here. Next, we will have description. We will make this description optional, so you can have description. It's like a mini cover letter, or it's the part that you explain yourself. But you may not want the description since we will have all the necessary information. And also, we will have the portfolio link, so description may not be needed. For that reason, we are going to make this option. And also, we will see how we are working with options, and that's the real reason. Here, I will say option, and we will have string. So again, this option means that I might have a description or don't, but it's not mandatory. Next, we have years of, let's say, experience, which will be a U8. It will be a U8. That will be enough. U8 means that I can have values 2 to the power of 8 minus 1 because I'm using 1 for the 0. And I don't think anyone has experience more than 2 to the power 8 minus 1. Next, let's say technologies. All right. Because, we can say, I know Sui Move, Rust, JavaScript, Java, C#, .NET, or maybe different technologies. So for that reason, we are going to have this technologies part. We will have portfolio. So this portfolio can be your GitHub or your personal website or anything that demonstrates your project. That's why we call it portfolio. Contact. It should be a string, so it's the contact, maybe your email, your website, your number, whatever you want. I don't recommend your number. And finally, open to work. And this will demonstrate that if you are open to work or not. Maybe you have a card, but then you found a job and you are going to deactivate it by setting this open to work field to false. Then the people would know that you are not open to work, but that's a desirable developer maybe. Then you can change it to open to work again. So this will be the structure that we are going to work with. And now let's create another one. Now we are going to have another one, and this will be called DevHub, and this will have key. Actually, we are going to share this object. This means that this object will be available to anyone, so anyone can actually manipulate it based on the functions that we provide, obviously. So the difference is that in general, with the previous examples, you can have a developer card or you can have an NFT, but you own it. This DevHub struct will not be owned by anyone, so it will be shared by the general public. So we are going to have our table and some information here so anyone can see. Of course, the first one is UID. Let's say owner, and this will be the owner of this contract. And then let's say counter. And this counter will be the IDs of the developer cards on our table. In our table, we are going to have IDs on the one hand and the cards on the other hand. And since we have all the necessary information, I will say the first card, the second card, the 15th card. So this counter will correspond to that ID in the table. Let me say U64. And finally, we will have cards. And this is our table. For that, I'm going to say object table. And on the left-hand side, again, we are going to say U64 because that's our ID, which is the counter. On the right side, we will have the developer card. And again, it means that this is my key and this is my value. This will be our shared object. If you don't understand right now, no worries. We are going to also talk about this a little bit in our initialization function. Now, I'm going to create my first event. So events are actually structs with some special abilities. So I will say struct and let's say card created. So this event will be emitted when a new developer card is created. And it will have a copy and drop, which is necessary to have an event. And this we will have ID, which will be ID, not UID. Then we will have the name as a string. Let's say owner, address. It's actually the same with the one above. Let's say title. Finally, contact. So as you can see, we didn't copy all of them. So I think this event has enough information. We have the string, also the ID. This ID actually will come from this DevCard, but we are going to transform it so that we can use it in here, not as an UID, but an ID. Then we will have the name, owner, title. So if you look at this card, you can see that it's from this developer. It will say it's from this developer with the name, and we can see his or her address. And then we can see the title of this developer, which is very important. And based on this information, if you want to contact them, we will have the contact information. This will be our event. So as you can see, it's not that different. We just have this copy and drop instead of key or store. In our contract, we will make this description editable. So users will be able to edit this description. And for that reason, we are going to create another event. Let's say description. Is it updated? Oops, sorry, because we need to say as copy and drop since this will be an event. And for this one, let's say name, which will be string, owner, address, and the new description. And this new description also will be a string. That's it. So that's actually our, of course, we haven't used a bunch of them. So we got a couple of errors, but ignore them for a second. As you can see, this is the basis and this is the base structure of our contract. Let's first look at our constants. We have not the owner and insufficient funds, which are actually the errors that we are going to use. If it's not clear right now, don't worry. We are going to understand it later when we use it. But we said this is the not the owner corresponds to 0 and insufficient funds corresponds to 1. You can give any number because in general, again, we give numbers as the error. So I would say error code 0, error code 1. But since it's hard to understand what is 0 and what is 1, we created some constants so it's easier to see. Then we have min card cost, which will be the minimum card cost. And we also created this as a constant. Then we needed to create some structures for our contract so that we can work with them. We said that we are going to have developer cards that's going to be displayed. For that reason, we created a developer card struct, which is an SwiMove object. And as you can see, it has an ID because it's a SwiMove object. And we have a bunch of information here, which I think will be enough for developer card for the first look. Then we have this developer hub object, DevHub SwiMove object, which will be shared because we want to add new cards and we want anyone to be able to new cards to this table. So since this table is in this object should be shared so that anyone can manipulate it based on the functions we provide. We also have this counter which will correspond to this key and also the owner of this contract and the, of course, ID of this object. Then we said that, okay, we have our structures, but we also need a couple of events so that our frontend can know if something changed on our blockchain. For that reason, we created two events. First one is card created, And the second one is description updated. In these events, we didn't give all the information that we gave with this structures, but instead we gave enough information that we think is easily understandable. Again, this will be our structure. And in the next lesson, we are going to start with our init function and also our create card function. So thank you very much for listening to me on this video, and I will see you on the next one.